Welcome, everybody, to the first class in the third chapter of the Yoga Sutras. So, this is a very interesting chapter, and it's also a very important chapter. It is titled the Vibhūti Pādaḥ. Vibhūti means glories. It's people also use the word siddhis. So, these glories are perfections from yoga. Okay, so these are the vibhutis. See, few people are joining. Yeah, so these are the hi Carrie. We are talking about the vibhutis or the glories of from the practice of meditation. People also use the word siddhis. We'll see there's a slight nuance difference between the word vibhuti and siddhi. The 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gītā is also called Vibhūti Yoga, all the glories of Bhagavan. Talks about, Bhagavan says, the greatest things that you see in the universe are just a figment of my manifestation. So that is the term Vibhūti. Now, I wanted to recap. So we've studied the first and the second chapter. Now here in this chapter, what Patanjali is going to do is he's going to talk about the antaranga sadhanani, which means antaranga means the inward facing, as opposed to bahiranga, which is the external facing practices. Sadhana is practices. The second chapter is called Sadhana Pada, which is the chapter on practice. Then in this chapter, Patanjali will talk about, so antaranga sadhana, by the way, they are, can anybody tell what the antaranga sadhanas are?
Pratyahara, dhāraṇā, dhyāna,
And?
samādhi.
Okay. Typically, pratyahara is a state where you go from outside to inside by withdrawing the senses inward. It's not considered antaranga sadhana. So it's dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. Correct. They are considered the antaranga sadhanani. Now, Patanjali, this is a very, very, very important topic, and it's often not clearly illustrated in books. It's called saṃyama. Patanjali uses the word saṃyama not just to all these three. So these are the antaranga sadhanani, but using dhāraṇā, dhyāna, and samadhi in a particular fashion to extract information, superpowers. Essentially, this is how in those days, 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 years ago, people understood how the universe operated, how the planets moved. They didn't have telescopes. They knew exactly the course of the planets. Also, they knew how the planets exhibited forces on us. That is a big science. It's a pseudoscience called Jyotish or Vedic astrology. So this is, Patanjali is going to talk about this. Rest of the chapter is about the various types of saṃyama on your navel chakra, this, you can get a lot of powers from that. Then the third is the mechanics of meditation. Patanjali goes into detail on how the meditation works. Meditation, even when the mind seems still, there are things happening at the samskara level. These are the imprints. Patanjali is going to talk about that. And then Patanjali lays the groundwork for explaining these glories from meditation. Okay, so those are the contents of the chapter 3, first part. Okay, then the second part, I will distinguish between the term siddhis and vibhutis, even though they're used interchangeably. Then the powers, we've seen powers from various limbs of yoga. We'll briefly recap and we'll see the ways to attain siddhis. This is as a stepping stone to the third part. So introduction to vibhutis is a stepping stone to the third part, which is the glories arising from meditation. Patanjali talks about various types of glories, knowledge of time, communication, reading others' minds. We'll see, Swami Hariharananda says, reading others' mind is an easy form of glory, apparently. Even though for us it seems very difficult, but that's what Swami Hariharananda says. Then mastery over the physical body and form, powers of strength and subtle perception, cosmic knowledge, astronomy and anatomy. This is how they found Ayurveda, how the body worked. Transcendental powers and mastery over the elements, and then the final goal of Kaivalyam. All those are in the third portion. So we'll see all the three portions. Now, first we will start with Antaranga Sadhanani, which is the three steps ending in samadhi: dhāraṇā, dhyāna, and samadhi. So samadhi is the ultimate state of yoga. Even in samadhi, there are various classifications from the lowest forms to the highest forms. This we saw in great detail in the first chapter. And samadhi is reached in stages. One cannot just go to samadhi. You have to go first dhāraṇā, dhyāna, samadhi. Now, I have a question. The samadhi is only being defined now in the third chapter, not even in the second chapter. But the first chapter talks about all types of samadhis. Why is that? Why did it seems meaningless? Before defining samadhi, Patanjali is talking about all kinds of samadhis in the first chapter, even though I defined it for you, but it's not in the sutras. Can anybody say this? I've actually told you why that is so.
I thought it was because the first chapter was for like very advanced students,
very
so
good.
maybe they already know. Yeah.
Very good. Excellent. Yeah. So the way some texts are written, especially if it's like an aphorism, a sutra format, the first chapter is meant for advanced students. So they don't have to read through everything. So they just have to read the first chapter. So the first chapter is therefore arranged in that format. And this is a well-known written form for some of these texts. So that is why Patanjali defines samadhi now, but he talks about all the advanced details earlier on. Okay, now we will see the various types of samadhis also. I will recap it for you, so don't worry. Now, Antaranga Sadhanani. This we've covered, so this is more like a recap for you. Antaranga Sadhanani are dhāraṇā, dhyāna, and samadhi. Desha bhandha chittasya dhāraṇā. Now Patanjali defines dhāraṇā. Dhāraṇā, the word, English word, though there is no exact equivalent, they use it as focus, but it's a lot more nuanced. And that's why you have to read Swami Hariharananda's commentary, because he talks about the subtle nuances of these words. Dhāraṇā is desha bandhaha, is the binding of the mind, chittasya, of the mind, chittasya means of the mind, desha bandhaha, binding to a particular space. Desha means a space. So desha also means land, but it's just space. Dhāraṇā is the binding of the mind to a particular space. That is, fixing attention within a certain boundary. Mind does wander, okay? But it's generally you're trying to confine it, not let it go wild. For example, you want to focus on a candle flame. So in your mind, you visualize a candle flame. You're visualizing, then suddenly you forget, I have to buy something. So for the candle reminds me of some fragrance. Then from mind goes from candle to a perfumed candle, and then you immediately realize, I have to buy something. When the smell comes, so that thing I have to buy. So the mind wanders. Then you pull it back. So this is how the natural tendency of the mind is to wander. So you pull it back, and still you confine yourself around the candle, the flame, there is the wax, all that. So it's not like you have only one thought. It's trying to focus. It's going away. Then you're pulling it back. So you must first define the boundary. Vyasa says, you tell your mind you're allowed to be in this, or you can say, I can focus on my chest. So you are allowed to be in the chest region and feel the sensation. Some people are more tuned to visual things, some people to smell, some people to sound, and some people to feelings. And you can say, if you're a person who is more attuned to feelings, you can say you're allowed to be in the chest region, observe the sensations of the breath. You are not allowed to go to the knees or the sounds outside. So the container here, so the desha, is the chest region. You close your eyes and bring your attention to the chest. Mind wanders away, you bring it back. Okay. The example Vachaspati Mishra gives is the classic analogy of water flowing from a pot. Due to the splashing of the water within the pot, when you tilt the pot, what you get is not a smooth flow, but a series of chunks of water, a discontinuous flow. So you observe the sensations of the breath, then the mind wanders, you bring it back. So dharana is defined as a series of contacts. It is not a smooth flow. Dharana is all about containment. It tries to wander, you contain it. Okay? And one thing I wanted to say is a lot of these things may look the way this is a scientific document. So definitions are very precise, unlike in Bhagavad Gītā, which is very poetic. These are very scientifically precise definitions. But everybody, you all would have experienced these things. Even samadhi, momentarily, shanika samadhi, just momentarily your mind would have been engrossed. So it is not an alien topic. This is all very well experienced by people. Nirbija samadhi, probably that's the highest state of samadhi. Do you remember? Sampragnata and asampragnata, or sabija and nirbija samadhi. Nirbija samadhi is probably a little out for most of us, but the sampragnata samadhi, that is the lower form of samadhi where there's an object of focus. Do you remember the two types of samadhis? Does anybody want to say what those are and the differences? Broadly speaking. Yes, Amy.
Yeah, I'm not going to remember it perfectly, but like with and without words. So it's like having the kind of verbal monologue, inner monologue versus the experience.
Yeah. So those are the various classification, vitakta, vichara, ananda, asmita in the sampragnata. But broadly speaking, it is with seed or without seed, or with cognition or without cognition. Sampragnata means with cognition. Some means with or total. With cognition, fully cognition is involved. That is, the mind is thinking about something like a flame. It's visualizing, or a feeling, or the sense of pure eye, or bliss in the mind. You're reveling in the bliss. Sananda, sasmita, all that. And the highest form of samadhi is asampragnata, where there's nothing to hold on to. The mind needs something to hold on to, otherwise it'll slip away. And that is the highest state. That people may not have experienced, but that's good to know. The other one, it's all very well within our reach. Okay, so dharana is defined. Tatra pratyayaikatanata dhyanam. Dhyana. Now look how it's very precise. Tatra means there. There. Where there means where? In that space that is created from dharana. So what does it show? It shows it is a continuous process. It is a sequential process. From dharana, you go to dhyana, and then to samadhi. You can't like skip it. It may take quickly. People who are experienced will quickly go there, but you have to go through this. You cannot say, oh, I can never go to samadhi because my mind is wandering. But initially you have to just gently bring it back, There in that space, the continuous unbroken flow of the same mental modification is meditation. It seems complicated. Tatya, pratyaya. What does anybody know what the word pratyaya is? Anjana, Amy, Anu, Leena. Pratyaya, the word I've told you many times. It's an important word.
Okay. In my notes, I have the contents of the movie
Yeah,
screen.
perfect, perfect, perfect definition.
Right,
It
great.
is the movie being played. If the chitta is the movie theater, then pratyaya is the contents, the movie, the sounds, all that. Perfect. So tatra pratyaya, the mental modifications, ekatanata. So instead of the picture becoming different, same picture, same sound or same sound, the continuous unbroken flow of the same mental modifications is meditation. Now, here, this is why commentary is important. Now, this sutra is so mistaken and wrongly quoted in textbooks that I can't tell you how many people have gotten headaches by thinking, by exactly taking the definition as such. Then what people do, okay, I have to get into dhyana, so I have to maintain the same picture. So the candle is there in my mind. I have to keep it from second to second. I have to keep it, and I have to focus, and people get a headache from that. That is not what is meant. Tatra pratyaya ekatanata means one continuous flow, unbroken, is meditation. And we will look at what it is. Here, it doesn't mean ekatanata doesn't mean it is the same. It means the mind revolves around the object without any break. Previously, it was going away. Now it's all candle, but you look at different aspects of the candle. You may look at the warmth of the candle. You may feel the sweet smell. So the mind is settled now. It's become settled. It's revolving around the candle, but it's much more settled. The mind revolves around the object without any break. So Vyasa calls it sadrishya bhavaha. So we'll see that example in 1 second. So Vyasa's definitely, he gives an elaborate definition. And the example Vachaspati Mishra uses is like that of oil. Dhāraṇā, or dhyāna, sorry, here I should correct it as dhyāna, is likened to smooth flow of oil from a pot. Now, but this is what's happening. It's smooth. As the candle is burning, changes are happening at the micro level. But at the macro level, the picture from far away, it seems to be the same. You're feeling the warmth, the smell, and the flame, all that you're kind of slowly getting absorbed into that. Okay. This does not mean that the image does not change. Vyasa uses the term sadrishya pravaha, which means flow of similar mental modifications. So you don't go from candle to, oh, then you remember of a time in Disneyland when they had so many candles lit, so your mind travels to Disneyland. No, that is in the dharana stage where you pull it back. In dhyana, the mind gets concentrated around the candle. Vyasa does not say identical fixed modifications. He says sadrisha means similar modifications. And Swami Hariharananda adds a psychological nuance. In dharana, you are aware of the location. I must focus on the heart. In dhyana, the location becomes secondary, and the attributes of the object become more primary. The mind begins to explore the subtle qualities of the object. So when you're thinking of the candle, initially your mind keeps going away to other things, like to Disney World. But in this case, you feel the warmth of the candle. So that kind of settles your mind more. You feel if it's a scented candle, you feel the smell, and your mind begins to settle down. So that is dhyana. So the location becomes secondary. So if you're feeling these feelings within your chest region, you don't now focus, I have to bring it to my chest. My thought is my mind is going away. I have to bring it to my chest. You don't feel that. You're just now, you forget that you're in the chest. It's just in different things out in the chest. Mind begins to explore the subtle qualities of your object. Dhyana is still dualistic. You still know, I am meditating. This is a very important point. The ego is distinct from the object. Okay, and this will disappear only in samadhi. Vyasa's elaboration. Ekatanata. tasmin deshe dhyayalambanasya pratyayasyaikatanata sadrishah pravaha pratyayantarena aparamrishtah dhyanam. So this is, he elaborates this. What does he say? Ekatanata is one-pointedness. Sadrisha pravaha, flow of similar mental modifications. Okay, so he defines ekatanata. He elaborates tasmin deshe dhya dhyaya alambanasya pratyaya ekatanata. Pratyaya ekatanata is sadrisha pravaha. He says ekatanata, one-pointedness, is not being at one point. He calls it sadrisha pravaha. Sadrisha means similar. Pravaha means flow of similar mental modifications. Pratyaya antarena aparamrishtaha, and which is untouched by other dissimilar mental modification. Important. He adds this crucial condition. Pratyayantarena paramrishto, which means pratyaya antarena. Pratyaya is the contents of the mind. Antarena is, we can say, untouched, or the contents. Antarena means the contents here. Aparamrishtaha means paramrishtaha means untouched by dissimilar mental modification. So that is dhyana. Dhyana becomes more settling in. Still subject and object. You know you're meditating. It is there. So far, are things clear? We've already seen this. I'm revisiting again with greater detail. Does anybody have any questions so far before we move into samadhi? We've seen this in the first chapter.
Yes, Ganesh, could you please speak more to pratyaya again?
Yeah, pratyaya, we saw that in the first chapter. Pratyaya, I'll send you an article. I'll post it in the group. So the mind is like a movie theater. So chitta is the movie theater of the mind. And it is the closest to the consciousness. The chit is the light, the projector lamp. Those days they have these days also they have a projector lamp, but it's different. It's kind of shines on a DLP. Previously there used to be a screen, a film. The film is from the senses, information from the senses or from the mind, and it gets projected on the screen. The contents of the screen of the mind, the movie, the images, those are all called the mind stuff. They use the term mind stuff or pratyaya. Okay. Now samadhi is tadevartha matra nirbhasam swarupa shunyamiva samadhihi. That eva artham, that same, that very object of eva means very, that when that very object of meditation, nirbhasam, matra, so matra means alone, shines forth. Nirbhasam means shining forth. Matra means alone. When that very object of meditation alone shines forth, swarupa shunyam iva. Now look at the word he uses, very, very important. Every word is loaded. That is the definition of a sutra. Though devoid of the subject, that I am meditating, that state is called samadhi. You lose your identification. You're just so engrossed with that. A classic example is after a tired workout, when you go sit in a hot tub with water, you feel your body is melting, right? Sometimes you have that feeling, your body is melting. When you're in such joy, your entire body seems to be like melting. And that state where you don't, the subject-object distinction goes away, that is called samadhi. So it means total absorption. Shunyam eva means nothing, it's zero. So the swarupa shunyam means when you feel I am different from the object, that goes away. So there's only the object that is there. You feel just engrossed or melted into the object. Eva, so as if, remember, it is not the subject melting, subject going away. Very careful. This word, this is the key. This subject-object distinction falls away. Why does Patanjali uses the word iva? As though the mind hasn't actually been destroyed. If it were destroyed, you would be dead or unconscious. The mind is still there, functioning perfectly, but it is transparent to the user. Yes, Lataji? Okay. We also saw this classical example, the analogy of training a horse. In dhāraṇā, the horse struggles to escape, but it's confined to a circle by a rope. The horse wants to go away. It's tied to a pole and it wants to go away. It's just running in all directions, but it's the pole tries to keep it within a circle, right? The observer is out of the circle observing from far away. That is the dhāraṇā. Then in dhyāna, the horse settles down slowly. It starts grazing within the circles, moving away. It's eating grass here. Then the observer comes closer and sits close to the horse. Then what happens? In samadhi, the observer and horse have become one entity. There's no subject-object distinction. The observer I am meditating is gone. You're just totally engrossed. That's why samāpatti, the word. Does anybody remember the word samāpatti in the first chapter? Shinavritter abhijatasya mane gahit grahana grahyeshu tats tadanjanata samāpattihi. He defines engrossment. That samāpatti is engrossment. So that is samadhi and samāpatti are used more or less same, but samāpatti refers to the engrossment and samadhi is the state. This is the engrossment and samadhi is the state. Okay, that is samadhi. Okay, so far is everything clear to everybody? Okay, then we'll go on to a special technique to reveal knowledge. So this is in most of the textbooks, it is not explained well. It is not just combination of dhāraṇā, dhyāna, samadhi. If you just look at the sutra, it'll say, the sutra says, trayam ekatra saṃyamaha. So what it means is this triad, trayam means three, the triad, dhāraṇā, dhyāna, samadhi. Ekatra, when practiced on a single, ekatra just means in one place or on a single object. When practiced on a single object is called saṃyama. This is the definition. Now, what people say, okay, I'm just calling dhāraṇā, dhyāna, samadhi together. It is called saṃyama. But there's also another name. It is called antaranga sadhanani, right? Why again call it by a different name, right? So, no. This has a particular meaning, and we will see that. Sam means thoroughly, completely, or well. Yama means to restrain, so hold back. Saṃyama means thorough restraint, total integration of the mental faculties upon a single object. Okay, this is a very, very important point. So this is how people understand. You can use it to understand a certain situation in meditation. Okay, it is the process of focus until the mind's power is concentrated like a magnifying glass. Patanjali describes it as or Vyasa describes it as a state of super consciousness where the latent properties of meditations are revealed to the yogi's inner eye. Okay. Now, as I said, what is this big deal about saṃyama? Why not? Why do you want samadhi? So if you see Vyasa's definition, so Vyasa's commentary is the gold standard. Every other person has written most other people have written a sub-commentary. Even an intellectual giant like Vachaspati Mishra. Vachaspati Mishra is called Sarvatantra Swatantraha. He has written commentaries on all the 6 darshanas of the Indian philosophies. And when he writes on Sankhya, he will write it as a dualistic thing. When he writes on Vedanta, he will write it as Advaitam, without dual. So he is considered the expert on all. He has written a sub-commentary on Vyasa's commentary. Vyasa's commentary is the gold standard, and Vyasa's commentary starts with what's the first sentence in Vyasa's commentary? I've told this many times before. Anybody wants to say? Amy, you want to say?
I don't remember this.
Yeah, yoga is samadhi. Yoga, samadhi. So what does it say? Yoga is meditation. There are the other limbs, but this is the main goal, is chitta vritti nirodha, when the mind is free of vrittis. So samadhi is the highest state of yoga. Then why does Patanjali include lower states of meditation like dhāraṇā, dhyāna, and call it saṃyama? Right? If PhD or MD is the highest level of education, why include elementary school education and call the whole thing by a special name? Do we do that? This person attended elementary school here. They may say PhD, masters from this university, bachelors. You see the LinkedIn profiles, bachelors from this university. Maybe some people say they went to this high school, but nothing. They don't say where they went to middle school or elementary school. After there are kids who did not receive a good elementary school education. They were homeschooled, but nevertheless, they got splendid PhDs and MDs, right? So what is the reason? Does anybody want to guess?
My guess is that like we go between these states, but I don't know, just that like that it's maybe not a linear process, that we might hop around between the three.
Yeah.
Or it is assumed that you have completed.
Say that again, Anjana.
Maybe it is assumed that you have achieved all those lower levels of, you have completed those lower levels of state or education.
Yeah, but then why you can just call it samadhi? Why call it, why say saṃyama is used for all the siddhis? So the term saṃyama is specifically with respect to getting this information which normally you can't get. You, without a telescope, how do you know all the movement of the stars, the planets, everything? Patanjali is now telling how a process by which you can get superhuman knowledge. So the reason is as follows. Why saṃyama is critical to shed knowledge? When you are in samprajñāta samadhi, does everybody remember samprajñāta samadhi? That is the lower form of samadhi where you have an object of focus. There are 4 types of samprajñāta samadhi in increasing levels. Let me see if I have it is vitarka, vichara, ananda, asmita. Gross objects like a flower petal, subtle object, the smell of the flower, then ananda is joy. When the mind is in joy, you meditate on that. And asmita, the pure eye sense that is seeing. When after this, and it comes in stages, vitarka, vichara, ananda, asmita. You go in the Buddhist literature, it's called jhanas, the 4 jhanas. Some people include a 5th one, 4 jhanas. So when you're in samprajñāta samadhi, there is no control over the object of focus. You can go from in meditation, you go from a gross object to a subtle object to joy and to asmita, I-ness. Right? Asmita is the state after joy. There's pure I am. There's no qualification. I am happy, I'm sad, I'm frustrated. There's just I am. You reach that state of, it is also called equanimity. You are just I am. There is I am. That's a pure asmita. This is the state where the picture that I've shown you often, I don't know if I have the picture of the moon. Remember this picture? The still lake with ripples, moon's reflection. There's no other things, pure reflection. That is that state. Okay, so vitarka, vichara, ananda, asmita, and then you may even slip into asampragnata samadhi where there is no object of focus. So there is no control. In pure samadhi, you have no control over the object of focus, because the mind's ultimate goal is to drop the object entirely and attain liberation. If your goal is to extract the absolute truth or hidden knowledge of a specific object, say the anatomical structure of the body, those days they didn't have all these tools to imaging to understand the body. So the anatomical structure of the body, if you want to know, or you want to know the alignment of the stars and the planets, or the mind, read the minds of others, you cannot allow your mind to drift into void. Asampragnata samadhi is essentially void. There's no seed there. You must forcefully hold the mind onto an object. That is why you have to use dhāraṇā, dhyāna, and samadhi in a certain way. The example that is given is like removing, in some places they still have wells. You put the rope and the bucket and you withdraw water. The water is like the information. So you're trying to withdraw it. You need, if you just let the bucket fall and just float in the water, that's like samadhi, right? Then you're not going to get any information. You have to withdraw it back. So that is why the dhāraṇā, the focus, dhyāna, and samadhi, all three are needed. You're using it. It's not like in dharana, your mind is totally wandering and you're trying to bring it away. You're focusing, you're steering. Okay, now I understand this information. Let's go to this. So that's what you're doing. So to extract knowledge of an object, you need to maintain focus on the object. Otherwise, you may drift away from one state to the next. So you can go from vitarka, vichara, ananda, asmita, and then even to nirbija samadhi. So Swami Hariharananda says, saṃyama is a working samadhi. To perform saṃyama, the yogi must stay on the edge. They use dhāraṇā as a reassertion of the object to prevent the mind from falling into a contentless state. Swami Hariharananda says the yogi must apply saṃyama to the stage where the object resides and not a step further. Okay, so there are two samskaras there. We'll see that soon. Vyuttana samskaras, outgoing tendencies to retrieve the knowledge, and nirodha samskara, the inward tendency. So in nirodha samskara, you will just, the mind, if it goes deep, the mind just melts. You're in total absorption. There's no control. There's no effort at all. But here you need effort. Remember, dharana requires effort. Here the effort is not, the mind is crazily wandering away. Effort is to pull the mind from that relaxed state and bring it to focus on something else, and then let it start dhyana and samadhi. It's in samadhi that when the mind is totally relaxed, you get a glimpse of the object, and then you retrieve it and bring it to some other place. So that is how they understood how the body worked, how the stars are aligned, and all these things that they were able to discover thousands of years ago. Vachaspati Mishra says, this explains how the triad functions as a single unit using the concept of Vyuttana samskara, the impression of outgoing or emergent mind. It explains how the yogi retrieves knowledge from the depth of samadhi. Okay, he explains the magic of revelation is the result of a mind being bound to a specific attribute of the object. Vyasa implies that if the yogi completely lets go of the Vyuttana, the intent to know, the samadhi becomes objectless and the specific vibhuti or the power cannot arise. Okay, so far is it clear? It's a very important thing. If the entire chapter is based on that. Yes, Amy.
Yeah, I'm just trying to put it together. Like, so if you slip into that asampranyata samadhi, like, are you saying that it's lost, or like, can you slip back, or
if you go into asampranyata samadhi, so look, okay, very good question. Now in sampranyata samadhi, there is the I am the meditator. So in some in the samprajñāta samadhi, there's an object of focus, right? Now, when you go into asamprajñāta, there's no control. There's no object of focus at all. So it's difficult to pull it back. The mind, the only reason it comes back is from the samskaras, the impressions. And in asamprajñāta samadhi, slowly, what's happening is all these impressions, samskaras. Remember, we use the term roasting of the seeds. That's what happens. All the impressions get destroyed. Tasyapi nirode sarva nirodan nirbija samadhi. The last sutra of the first chapter. Tasyapi nirode sarva nirodan nirbija samadhi. All the impressions are getting wiped out. So it's difficult to, it will come on its own from the impressions. You have no control over that. In samprajñāta, you can, since there's an object of focus, and by pulling into dhāraṇā, you can change the object of focus, get information here from this side, that side, everything. Is that clear?
Yeah, I think so. Do the Yoga Sutras make any comment about like what the goal
Very
should be?
good.
And I guess I'm
Yes.
I'm asking
Yes.
because like
Goal, yes.
this is,
I
yeah,
was going
like
to
a
say
big distinguisher, right,
Asamprajñāta
between a
samadhi,
religion. Yeah.
Yes, asamprajñāta samadhi is for kaivalyam. This is, as I said, the Yoga Sutras is a scientific document. Yoga can also be used to understand certain things. The entire chapter is about that. It is not about kaivalyam, is talked about at the end, but here the goal is specific, to get knowledge on a certain thing. It is, because it's a scientific document, they also have to say, these are the side benefits, and Patanjali will see all that clearly, will say, te samadau upasarga vyuttane siddhayah. They are obstacles. All these, when you get caught up in all these superpowers, they are obstacles to samadhi, but in this mortal world, they call it siddhis or superpowers. Is it clear?
I see. But I guess it's not trying to make a moral judgment on it. It's just kind of like giving you the information, and then you can
Because
do what you
exactly
Yeah.
in scientific document, you have to capture everything, right? So all these are stated. And Patanjali gives a statutory warning too.
Yeah. Cool.
Does this mean saṃyama only apply to samprajñāta?
Yes, very good.
samadhi?
Wonderful question. Yes, I was going to say that. See, Leena, you're reading my mind. You already have said this. So, yes, I was going to ask you the question, but now you asked the question. So, yes, saṃyama refers only to samprajñāta samadhi and not to asamprajñāta samadhi, because there's an object of focus. Excellent question. Okay. What happens due to the mastery of saṃyama? Tajjayat prajñālokaha. Beautiful sutra. How beautiful. Just listening to the sutra, sometimes the mind becomes calm. Tajjayat, upon its mastery, prajñā alokaha. Alokaha means arises. Prajñā is higher knowledge, intuitive wisdom that arises. When the triad prajñā is true transcendental knowledge. The transcendental knowledge is, we have appearances and forms. Like, for example, you look at a person, the person is may not give you a good impression, but the person is a very kind person, one of the most noble, knowledgeable persons. You may not see that, but when your mind is tuned, you will see through that. Okay, so prajñā alokaha, when the triad of dhāraṇā, dhyāna, samadhi is perfectly sustained on an object without interruption, it culminates in prajñā, and the flashing or dawning of the absolute, truth-bearing transcendental light. We'll use the word ruthambarava tatra prajñā. So remember, in the first chapter, he uses the word truth-bearing wisdom. Ruthambarava tatra prajñā. Let me see if I can pull the... yes, so Patanjali says, Ritambhara tatra prajñā. Okay, Okay, Amy has to, okay, Amy won't be able to attend. Okay, that's fine. Wisdom that is gained therein is filled with truth. Okay. Now, okay. So at this moment, the object yields its deepest secrets. The observer perfectly understands the object's past, present, future, subtle components, and purpose. That is what happens due to the mastery of saṃyama. Okay. Then practicing saṃyama in stages. Tasya bhumishu viniyogaha. One has to practice saṃyama in stages. Tasya, of that. Tasya means of that, of what? Of saṃyama, the resulting light. Bhumishu, in stages. Bhumishu means in stages, on the levels. Viniyogaha, one has to apply or employ, practice. One has to practice saṃyama in stages, and that is Swami Hariharananda. All these are very vague, but for the person who understands all this, sutras are just a mnemonic, just to remember, right? So yeah, knowledgeable person will be able to deconstruct with minimum words. These are just pointers. So for example, you're writing in short form something, just one word, this, that. When you have a grocery list, you will use abbreviations, right? Because you know what to buy, it's easy. So similarly, the sutras are aphorisms. The very few words are used for you need a knowledgeable person to deconstruct and elaborate it. So here Swami Hariharananda says what those stages are. The stages in the sampragnata samadhi. So we've seen this is why the first and the third chapters are connected. We've seen this before. So in the first chapter, there is a Sheena Vritter Abhijatasya Mane. There's this sutra. Like when the vrittis of the minds are depleted, like an unblemished crystal, taking on the color of a nearby object, the mind takes on the features of the grasper, the instrument of grasping, grahya, grahita is the one who grasps, dhāraṇā is the instrument, and grahyam, that object which is grasped. This identification is called samāpatihi. So I'm going to explain this in detail. So, okay. Now, grahya is the object, grahana, instrument, grahitra is the knower. So, we've already done, in the first chapter we saw, the 4 states of sampragnata samadhi are on these 3 things: the knower, instrument of knowing, object of knowledge. The first stage, remember, vitarka and vichara, right? Do you remember that? The 4 stages, vitarka, vichara, ananda, asmita of the sampragnata samadhi. Vitarka means gross object, vichara means subtle object. All these are objects. So grahyam, engrossment on the object of knowledge. So depending on the gross or the subtle, that is the first stage. So you have to go through the stage. Then grahana means the engrossment on the instrument of knowing. This is becoming more subtle. Instrument is the mind and its state. This is the sa ananda samadhi, where you go revel in the bliss of the mind. Then grahita, the engrossment on the knower, grahita samadhi. That's a sasmita samadhi, or the meditation on the reflected consciousness, you can say. Other words, it's the meditation on the feeling of I am. After this, viveka khyati is obtained. That is, your mind becomes very discerning. So Swami Hariharananda says the highest stage cannot be reached all at once. This viveka khyati cannot be reached all at once, and one can only be reached after attaining perfection in the previous stages, one after the other. That's why Vyasa specifically says, Tasya bhumishu viniyogaha. One has to practice saṃyama in stages. And here, Swami Hariharananda says things like the thought reading. So reading other people's minds can be attained with the lower stages of the samprajñāta samadhi. You don't have to go to the higher stages. In the first itself, probably, he doesn't say exactly, but lower stages, he says. You can read others' minds. That's why it comes much earlier on in the chapter, reading others' minds. Okay. Vyasa stresses the importance of not skipping. Saṃyama must be applied to the sthula, gross objects of an object before moving to the subtle. Light from one stage becomes the torch that reveals the next stage. If a yogi tries to skip a level, saṃyama will not be stable. Light will flicker and fail. So Vyasa's warning, yogi cannot jump to the highest subtle levels of reality without mastering the lower ones first. Okay. Then saṃyama in comparison to nirbija samadhi. I'll stop with this sutra. Trayam antarangam purvebhyaha. These three, dhāraṇā, dhyāna, and samadhi, are internal limbs in comparison to the previous five. So he defines the antaranga sadharani. These are the three. Trayam, these three, dhāraṇā, dhyāna, samadhi, are internal limbs. And the previous five, he calls it bahiranga sadhanani, external limbs. Vyasa explains that the 8 limbs of yoga are divided into 2 categories based on the proximity to the actual state of cognitive absorption. The first 5 limbs, yamas are restraints, niyamas are observances, asanas posture, pranayama is, you can roughly say, controlling the breath. The pratyahara, sense withdrawal, they are the external limbs or the bahiranga sadhanani. They involve refinement of the body, the breath, and the relationship between the senses and the external object. In contrast, the final 3 are internal limbs, and Vyasa clarifies that these 3 occur directly with a portion of the mind called the chitta. Once the external disturbances are removed by the first 5 limbs, these 3 work together internally to bring about the direct realization of the object of meditation. Okay, so with that, we shall stop the class.